Congressman Khanna of California. It's good to have you, sir. Thank you for being with me. You have been now for a while, since your op-ed a few weeks ago in the New York Times, saying repeatedly, look, the Biden administration is not doing enough to tackle inflation. You said separately to the Times, rhetoric about, well, we're doing really well, quote, doesn't capture the profound sense of anxiety Americans feel. I know it's what you're hearing from your constituents. I just wonder if you've seen the White House take up any of the litany of recommendations that you made.
Poppy, I have. I think that the administration is now getting much stronger. I've had some conversations, a few things that they're considering. One would be an export ban of oil going before 2015, when we didn't allow oil to be exported. We could exempt our allies, our European allies, but that would do a lot to lower prices. There's no reason we need to be as dependent on the global price of oil. The second, the president has talked about this windfall profits tax that Boris Johnson passed in England, and that would put more money in the pockets of American consumers while they're paying $6-7 at the pump.
Okay, well, let's go through those line by line here, because those are two significant changes. So if you consider an export ban right now in the middle of Europe needing more access, especially to oil, I mean, you've seen what's happened in nat gas prices in less than a week, up about 50%. Why do that right now? Isn't that just harming the people we're trying to help?
Well, it would exempt our European allies, but I don't see any reason that we need to be sending our oil to China or to many other countries. So you can exempt NATO allies from that. But the reality is that this would actually significantly lower prices. I mean, there's no reason we need to be so dependent on the global price when we're a net exporter of oil.
So I read to your second point here about what you call windfall profit tax on oil companies. I read through the legislation, your bill this morning that was proposed back in March. It's similar to what Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat, has proposed in the past few days, which is a 21% surcharge on what he's calling excess profits for oil companies. I'm not sure either of you have really defined, what excess is. You're saying the difference between $45 a barrel and, $120 where we are now. But my question to you, and I've tried to think about this a lot of ways, is why does that make any economic sense right now? How does that incent oil companies to produce more if you're just going to tax them more?
Sure. Well, a couple points to it. It's the difference between $66 a barrel, which was where it was before the pandemic. But look, Boris Johnson has done this. It hasn't had any impact of negative in England so far. We did this in 1980, and it actually, after 1980, led to a increase in production and a decrease in price.
That's different because so much more drilling was open in Alaska then. I mean, correlation and causation are different things.
Sure, but there's no evidence that doing this is going to somehow decrease the current production, because as you know, it takes years to bring production on board. And so the question is, what is it going to do most immediately? Most of the money that's going to be getting taxed is going to stock buybacks. It's going to Wall Street by the oil company's own admission. So this is what this is going to do, is saying instead of giving their money on stock buybacks, put that money in the pockets of the American public. And go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's not just me that is scratching my head to try to figure out how this makes economic sense. I get that you represent constituents, like all of us, who are looking at these prices at the pump, especially in California, and they can't bear it, and their families can't afford it. But what needs to be done is something that will help them right now, and there's only so many tools the Fed has and the White House has. I mean, there are a number of Democrats who think this proposal like this doesn't make sense, including Jason Furman, who was a top economic advisor in the Obama White House. Here's what he said about this just yesterday.
Don't think an excess profits tax is the way to encourage, more investment and more supply. So I think it's barking up the wrong tree.
It sounds like you're saying not just barking up the wrong tree, but it actually could make it worse.
Depending on how it's designed and what the details are, absolutely.
He thinks it could hurt. Do you think he's wrong?
Well, look, you can get an economist for everything. I respect Jason Furman, but he doesn't have the urgent. I mean, Robert Reich has come out for it, and all the conservative economists advising Boris Johnson came out for it, and the conservative government passed it. And the reason is that this is a question of whether these excessive profits that are being caused by Putin's war, whether they belong to shareholders or whether they belong to the American public. And the reality is there's not going to be an increase in supply. Look, if the oil companies were taking this money and drilling and increasing production, we would have an argument. That's not what they're doing.
I just have one. First of all, it's not just any economist. This is the top economist from the Obama White House that I just played for everyone.
Sure, but there are a lot of top economists.
Have you talked to any oil executive? I know the White House invited them there next week, who said, sure, windfall tax, we're going to drill more, refine more, even knowing that on top of that increased tax in a few years, you know, the position of this administration is less fossil fuel, not more. So you're not going to want us to do that in a few years. How does that make business sense? Have they said to you they would do that?
Well, first of all, there are a lot of economists, other than Jason Furman, who recommend a windfall profits tax, Robert Reich being one, and other economists. So the economists are split on the issue, and many conservative economists recommended it to Boris Johnson. But the second point is, no, a lot of the oil companies, of course, they don't want a windfall profits tax because they're making record profits. So while I've engaged with them, there's not a single one who said, yeah, please tax us on our excessive profits. But they will acknowledge that they can't increase drilling anytime in the near term. So it's not that tax is going to somehow decrease short-term production, and actually having the export ban would increase the production, or having the government purchase and sell back onto the market at a subsidized rate. So there are other ways that we can increase the supply, lower price, but putting money back into the hands of consumers, I think, is smart policy.
I always appreciate the lively debate. Congressman Khanna, thanks. Have a nice week.
Thanks, Poppy.